The first rule of Fight Club is you do not talk about Fight Club. Fight Club wasn't just a movie about underground brawls. It was a cinematic riot against consumerism, masculinity, and corporate control. Behind the camera, chaos erupted. Actors got real injuries. Executives panicked. Entire neighborhoods thought UFOs were landing on set. What looked like a stylish psychological thriller was, in reality, a war zone between vision and commerce. Today, we're breaking the silence with 20 weird facts about Fight Club you didn't know. And wait until you hear the bonus fact at the end. It's the kind of secret that makes you question the movie all over again. Let's dive in. 1. The box office disaster turned cult revolution. When Fight Club hit theaters in October 1999, it wasn't celebrated. It was condemned. The film cost $63 million to make, but earned only $37 million domestically. Critics were torn. Some hailed it as visionary, while Roger Ebert slammed it as macho porn disguised as philosophy. But the movie wasn't dead. It rose from the ashes when released on DVD. College campuses embraced it. Dorm rooms echoed with Tyler Durden's speeches. Video stores couldn't keep copies in stock. Suddenly, the same film studios called a disaster became the voice of a generation. Not a flop, but a resurrection. The failure of Fight Club at the box office became the very reason it flourished. Proof that sometimes audiences find a movie long after theaters give up on it. 2. David Fincher. Fought to direct Fincher wasn't the first choice. In fact, several A-list directors refused the project. The material was too controversial, too bleak. But Fincher saw something others missed, a manifesto disguised as chaos. He became obsessed. He storyboarded entire sequences before signing the deal. He pitched his vision as not just a story, but a cultural critique, consumerism, identity, and masculinity stripped bare. And he didn't demand his usual salary. Instead, he slashed his fee just to secure the chair, knowing executives were nervous about the subject matter. This wasn't Hollywood bravado. It was obsession bordering on mania. Fincher once said, "You are not your job. You're not how much money you have." By lowering his price, he lived that philosophy. He wasn't hired to direct Fight Club. He fought for it, and won. 3. Brad Pitt's teeth of rebellion. Tyler Durden doesn't look like a Hollywood poster boy. Brad Pitt made sure of it. Instead of sporting a perfect smile, he removed a cap from an old chipped tooth, revealing jagged imperfection. It wasn't an accident. Pitt believed Tyler shouldn't have flawless teeth. "This guy's philosophy rejects vanity," Pitt explained. He wanted his smile to look like it had been through fights, not photo shoots. The decision forced him to speak differently, giving Tyler's dialogue a raw, unpredictable cadence. Studios weren't thrilled, but Fincher backed him. It wasn't about charm, it was about truth. The chipped tooth wasn't created for the movie. It already existed. In a world of actors polishing their image, Pitt took the opposite road. Not perfection, but damage. And that damage became iconic. 4. The punch that wasn't fake. One of the most unforgettable moments happens when Norton's narrator first punches Pitt's Tyler. But here's what audiences didn't know. That punch was real. Fincher whispered to Edward Norton just before the cameras rolled, "Don't fake it. Hit him for real." Norton hesitated, then obeyed. Pitt wasn't warned. When Norton's fist landed on his ear, Pitt's wince and incredulous, "You hit me in the ear," was no performance. It was pain captured on film. The authenticity was so electric, Fincher kept it in the final cut. He wanted the fights to feel dangerous, messy, unpredictable. Not choreography, but chaos. That single blow set the tone for the rest of production. Not a movie pretending to show violence, but actors pulled into violence as reality. What audiences see isn't a staged fight. It's cinema, stealing a real bruise. 5. Actors became real fighters. Brad Pitt and Edward Norton didn't just act tough, they trained like fighters. Months before filming, they worked with boxing coaches, grapplers, and martial arts experts. Norton, who had never been in a real fight, found the process transformative. He admitted it tapped into something primal, a masculinity he hadn't known. They sparred for hours, learning how to take hits, fall properly, and make exhaustion look authentic. Fincher didn't want stylized Hollywood combat. He wanted blood, sweat, and clumsy brutality. Beyond fighting, the actors even learned soap-making from professionals. Every bar Tyler cuts on screen is handled with real, practiced gestures. It wasn't just acting, it was apprenticeship. By the time cameras rolled, Pitt and Norton weren't movie stars imitating fighters. They were amateurs who'd been dragged through the dirt of training. And it shows. 6. Meat Loaf's heavy burden. Robert Bob Paulson is unforgettable, sagging chest, broken spirit, desperate to belong. But playing Bob nearly crushed Meat Loaf, literally and emotionally. His fat suit weighed over 30 pounds, filled with birdseed to mimic realistic movement. Every day, it took 3 hours of makeup just to get him into costume. But the weight wasn't just physical. Meat Loaf was grieving the recent death of his father. That grief poured into his performance, especially during the heartbreaking "His Name Was Robert Paulson" scene. The fat suit embarrassed him, making him self-conscious, but it also became a vessel for his pain. Not just costume, but a cocoon of sorrow. Bob was meant to symbolize emasculation, but for Meat Loaf, he embodied personal loss. 7. Helena Bonham Carter's psychological armor. Marla Singer is chaos in human form, cynical, damaged, suicidal. Playing her took a toll on Helena Bonham Carter. She feared Marla's darkness would seep into her own psyche, so Carter created rituals of separation. She worked with a therapist throughout filming, then snapped back into her natural British accent between takes as a psychological barrier. Even her makeup reflected Marla's chaos. Carter requested it be applied left-handed, ensuring it looked sloppy. Smeared lipstick, crooked eyeliner, no clean lines. She also surrounded herself with personal trinkets, grounding her identity after each scene. Colleagues noticed that whenever she shed Marla's unflattering costumes, she immediately grew more cheerful, like shaking off a shadow. Playing Marla wasn't just acting, it was immersion into a mental minefield. Carter built armor not of steel, but of accent shifts and private rituals. 8th Starbucks in every scene. Coffee cups in Fight Club aren't random. David Fincher orchestrated one of cinema's greatest subversive Easter eggs, a Starbucks cup in nearly every scene. It wasn't product placement, it was satire. A story about anti-consumerism flooded with a corporate logo. Fincher explained, "When I lived in Los Angeles, I found Starbucks on every corner. So I thought, let's put one in every shot." Starbucks executives agreed with one condition: no Starbucks stores could be destroyed. Fincher obliged, replacing their logo with Gratifico Coffee for the explosive finale. For viewers who noticed, the irony was delicious. Tyler Durden railing against consumerism while sipping out of America's most corporate brand. For those who didn't, the logos worked subliminally, like wallpaper of modern capitalism. Not promotion, but provocation. Even in rebellion, Fight Club couldn't escape the corporate machine. It exposed it. 9. Subliminal Tyler Durden. Before Tyler officially steps into the frame, he haunts the movie like a ghost. David Fincher inserted single-frame flashes of Tyler Durden into the film's first act. In the office, at the doctor's, in support groups. Barely visible, but unsettling. Each lasted 1/24th of a second, short enough to evade conscious detection, but long enough to register subconsciously. Viewers often said something felt off without knowing why. The flashes mirrored the narrator's dissociative breakdown, giving audiences the same creeping unease. Fincher spent weeks timing them precisely, using them as psychological warfare on the audience. When Tyler finally arrives in full form, it feels inevitable, like he'd always been there, lurking at the edges. Not introduction, but confirmation. The subliminal flashes didn't just foreshadow the twist, they made viewers live it in real time. 10. The chemical burn that made crew faint. The lie on the hand scene looks horrifyingly real. Edward Norton writhes, skin blistering, Tyler calmly holding him down. Rumors spread that Fincher used real chemicals. Not true, but the illusion was so intense it made crew members nauseous. Special effects master Rob Bottin built progressive prosthetics that were swapped mid-scene to show the burn developing in real time. Norton studied medical footage of real chemical burns to mimic authentic reactions, while a harmless heating agent on his skin gave him a genuine stinging sensation. During close-ups, the prosthetics were so grotesque that one camera operator fainted. What audiences see isn't a digital trick. It's layers of practical effects, actor pain, and emotional brutality. Fincher demanded that suffering look real, and in this case, it was real enough to knock out his own crew. Before we jump into the next 10 facts, go ahead and like and subscribe, because just like Tyler's rules, we've got one. You do not stop watching until you hear the bonus fact at the end. Trust me, it's the most shocking secret of all. 11. Brad Pitt's improvised madness. Tyler Durden wasn't just scripted. Much of his chaos came from Brad Pitt's improvisations. The predatory walk, the finger drumming, the casual lip-licking, all Pittsburgh. He even invented Tyler's eerie hyena-like laugh after visiting a zoo and studying animal behavior. He told Fincher, "Tyler finds people's weakness funny, like a predator." Fincher loved it so much, he kept it. Many of Tyler's quotable lines, especially his cynical asides about consumerism, were off-the-cuff riffs during rehearsal. Pitt didn't perform Tyler as written. He embodied him, shaping him into a physical manifesto. Not character, but creature. The result? A villain-hero hybrid so magnetic, audiences didn't just watch him, they wanted to follow him. Pitt didn't just act Tyler Durden, he unleashed him. 12. The fight choreography that changed cinema. Most Hollywood fight scenes look like dances, polished, stylized, safe. Fincher rejected all of that. He hired fight choreographer Jeff Imada, who crafted something uglier: chaos. The fights in Fight Club are sloppy, brutal, exhausting. Fighters trip, miss punches, get winded. The realism was so convincing that later action movies borrowed from it. Norton and Pitt spent hours rehearsing, not to look cool, but to look desperate. Mixed martial arts techniques were added for authenticity, years before MMA became mainstream. Cameras captured fatigue, pain, and sweat, making the fights feel lived in rather than staged. Imada said his goal was to create beautiful violence that looks ugly. Not choreography, but collapse. The fights of Fight Club didn't just look real, they rewrote the rule book for fight scenes in cinema. 13. From flop to DVD explosion. In theaters, Fight Club looked like a disaster, but the DVD release rewrote history. By 2000, college campuses treated it like gospel. Students passed around copies, like contraband. Video stores couldn't keep shelves stocked. The special edition DVD became legendary. 4 commentary tracks, deleted scenes, music videos, even fake menus designed to mess with viewers. Entertainment Weekly later called it one of the most essential DVDs ever released. Sales topped 6 million in its first decade. The movie that Fox executives nearly buried became the movie every young rebel quoted. Not just a cult film, but a cult born from discs. What audiences didn't buy in theaters, they devoured at home. The irony? The most anti-consumerist film of its generation became a blockbuster through consumerism itself, a DVD you had to own. 14th. Real fight clubs began to spread. Fight Club was never meant to inspire actual fighting, but within months of its DVD release, police in the US, the UK, and even Australia reported secret underground fight clubs popping up. Men gathered in basements and warehouses, mimicking Tyler Durden's speeches word for word. They saw it not as satire, but as instruction. Some even used the name Project Mayhem. Fincher and author Chuck Palahniuk were horrified. Palahniuk admitted guilt, saying his novel had been misread as a manual rather than a critique. What was meant as commentary on masculinity's crisis became a blueprint for violence, not parody, but prophecy. The scariest twist wasn't in the movie. It was in how audiences twisted it. Tyler Durden wasn't just fictional anymore. He was recruiting followers in the real world. 15. A film that split. Generation's Fight Club didn't just divide critics, it split society. Gen X and early millennials clung to it as a rebellion against empty office jobs, cheap furniture, and corporate identity. They quoted Tyler during the 2008 financial crisis like he was scripture. The things you own end up owning you. But older audiences? They saw it as dangerous propaganda, glorifying violence and nihilism. The generational line was stark. One side saw freedom, the other chaos. The movie influenced fashion trends, online communities, even political movements. Academic studies emerged dissecting whether it was toxic or liberating. Not entertainment, but earthquake. Few films divide society for decades. Fight Club became one of them, and in that divide it found its power, a cult classic built on cultural fracture. 16. The Venice Film Festival Walkout Fight Club premiered at the 1999 Venice Film Festival, and it did not go smoothly. During Marla's infamous pillow talk line, "I haven't been expletive like that since grade school," the festival's director stood up and walked out. The audience sat in stunned silence, unsure whether to laugh or cringe. But up in the balcony, Brad Pitt and Edward Norton laughed through the discomfort. They believed in the film's power, even as others recoiled. Pitt whispered to Norton, "This will be the best movie we ever make." No applause followed. No standing. Ovation. Just uneasy whispers. The moment revealed everything about Fight Club. For some, unwatchable. For others, unforgettable. Not reception, but rebellion. The Venice screening set the tone. Fight Club wasn't going to please everyone, and it didn't want to. 17. Rosie O'Donnell's spoiler attack. 1 week before the U.S. release, Rosie O'Donnell saw Fight Club at a private screening. She hated it. On her talk show, she ranted that the film disturbed her so badly she couldn't sleep. Then she crossed the line. She spoiled the twist ending, live on air, and told viewers not to see it. Brad Pitt later called it unforgivable. Edward Norton said he was stunned. Fincher believed it contributed to the film's poor box office performance. Imagine promoting your movie only for one of America's most popular TV hosts to sabotage it in front of millions. Not critique, but sabotage. The irony? By spoiling the ending, O'Donnell ensured it became infamous. Her attempt to kill the movie only made it more of a legend. 18. Exploding buildings were real landmarks. The climactic shot of collapsing skyscrapers wasn't filmed against an anonymous skyline. Instead, Fincher digitally recreated real Los Angeles landmarks, including Fox Plaza, the same building used as Nakatomi Plaza in Die Hard. Why? To avoid lawsuits. Studios owned those buildings, meaning no outside company could sue over their destruction on screen. The effect took over a year to create. Visual artists animated 4 million shards of glass, frame by frame. Fincher joked in production meetings that conversations began sounding incriminating. Building number 3 needs to collapse more slowly. By blending real architecture with apocalyptic destruction, Fincher ensured the finale wasn't just visually stunning, it was eerily believable. Not digital spectacle, but architectural murder. Watching the towers fall, audiences didn't realize they were watching Hollywood blow up its own headquarters. 19. Every logo was damaged. Fincher's war against corporate branding went beyond Starbucks cups. Look closely. Every single corporate logo in Fight Club is defaced, cracked, or damaged. From the IKEA catalogs to the office printers, nothing escapes. It's subtle, so subtle most viewers miss it entirely. But subconsciously, the effect builds. The entire corporate world in Fight Club is already rotting. Fincher explained it as visual metaphor, capitalism itself breaking down. The logos we're trained to trust are presented as corrupted, unstable. Not background, but commentary. These small details mattered as much as the big speeches. While Tyler screams about rejecting consumerism, the props quietly scream the same thing. The set design became an invisible protest, mocking the very corporations funding the movie. What audiences didn't know, the anti-capitalist critique wasn't just in the script. It was baked into every frame. 20. The book came from a real beating. The spark for Fight Club didn't come from fiction. It came from Chuck Palahniuk's face. On a camping trip, he got into an argument with strangers that turned into a fight. Beaten and bruised, he returned to work expecting questions. None came. His co-workers ignored the black eyes and swollen jaw. That silence haunted him. People didn't want to acknowledge violence, even when it was obvious. So he imagined a world where men sought violence as release, where silence was replaced with screams. That seed grew into Fight Club, not invention, but confession. Palahniuk once said the scariest part wasn't the fight itself. It was how no one cared enough to ask. The movie's brutal honesty didn't just come from imagination. It came from a real man's broken bones and a world that refused to look. Bonus fact, Tyler Durden was always there. Here's the secret most fans still don't know. In the film's opening credits, before you meet Tyler, before any fight, before any twist, he's already there. Fincher hid him in subliminal flashes, but not just in the film's scenes. He appears in the opening cigarette burn of the projector, a literal flicker of Tyler watching the audience. Fincher once admitted he wanted viewers to feel haunted from the very start, even if they couldn't place why. Tyler wasn't just the narrator's hallucination, he was the audience's too, not twist, but invasion. From the first frame to the last collapsing building, Tyler is embedded in the film's DNA. The first rule of Fight Club is you don't talk about it. The real rule? Tyler was always there, even before you noticed. Fight Club began as a box office disaster, ridiculed, condemned, dismissed. But like its characters, it rose from the underground. Through chaos, it became a generational anthem. Through failure, it became immortal. Some films entertain, others provoke. Fight Club did both, and it still refuses to be ignored. If you loved uncovering these secrets, hit that like button, subscribe for more, and remember, you are not your job, you are not your bank account. You are a fan of movie history, and now you know the rules.